The Light in the Piazza is a musical with a book by Craig Lucas and music and lyrics by Adam Guettel. Based on a novella by Elizabeth Spencer, the story is set in the 1950s and revolves around Margaret Johnson, a wealthy Southern woman, and her developmentally stalled daughter, Clara, who spend a summer together in Italy. When Clara falls in love with a young Italian man, Margaret is forced to reconsider not only Clara's future, but her own deep-seated hopes and regrets as well. The score breaks from the 21st century tradition of pop music on Broadway by moving into the territory of Neoromantic classical music and opera, with unexpected harmonic shifts and extended melodic structures, and is more heavily orchestrated than most Broadway scores. Many of the lyrics are in Italian or broken English, as many of the characters are fluent only in Italian. Background and productions: The Light in the Piazza was developed as a musical at the Intiman Playhouse in Seattle in June 2003 and then at the Goodman Theatre in Chicago in early 2004. After 36 previews, the Broadway production opened on April 18, 2005 at the Vivian Beaumont Theatre in Lincoln Center, where it ran for 504 performances and closed on July 2, 2006. The musical was directed by Bartlett Shah, choreographed by Jonathan Butterell, with lighting by Christopher Okerlund, set by Michael Yegan and costumes by Catherine Zuber. The cast featured Victoria Clark, Kelly O'Hara, Matthew Morrison, Michael Burress and Sarah Berry. Chris Sarandon joined the cast as Signor Nacarelli later in the run. Adam Guettel was a replacement in the role of Fabrizio Nacarelli and Katie Rose Clark was a replacement in the role of Clara Johnson. In the pre-Broadway production in Seattle and Chicago, Kelly O'Hara played the role of Franca rather than Clara, and Stephen Pasquale had played Fabrizio, but could not open on Broadway due to a conflict with the television series Rescue Me that he had just joined. On June 15, 2006, shortly before its closing night, the show was broadcast on the PBS television series Live from Lincoln Center, and drew more than 2 million viewers. The cast consisted of Victoria Clark, Katie Rose Clark, Adam Guettel, Chris Sarandon, Patty Konow, Michael Burress, Sarah Berry, and Beau Gravitt. A United States national tour starring Christine Andreas as Margaret, Elena Shadow as Clara, and David Burnham as Fabrizio Nacarelli started at the Orpheum Theatre in San Francisco, California, in August 2006 and ended in Chicago on July 22, 2007. A Japanese production of the musical was produced in December 2007, having a limited engagement of about a month. It starred Kaho Shimada as Margaret Johnson. An Australian concert version had a one-night-only presentation at the Lyric Theatre, Star City in Sydney on August 17, 2008. The cast consisted of members of the Australian company of the Phantom of the Opera, with Jackie Reese as Margaret, Kathleen Moore as Clara and James Pratt as Fabrizio. The production was directed by John O'May. In the summer of 2008, Guettel reconfigured the musical as a smaller chamber piece for the Western Playhouse Theatre Company, Weston, Vermont, where Sarah Berry reprised her role as Franca. The show had its Opera House premiere in October 2008 at Piedmont Opera in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It starred Jill Gardner as Margaret and Sarah Jane McMahon as Clara, directed by Dorothy Danner and conducted by James Albritton. The first Los Angeles area local premiere was seen at the Covina Center for the Arts, in Covina, California in 2009. It starred Christopher Callan as Margaret, Brooke Tansley as Clara, and Craig D'Amico as Fabrizio under the direction of Brady Schwind. The Lethbridge Symphony Orchestra in Alberta presented the musical at the Yates Memorial Theatre October 19, Euro 21, 2009, which was the Canadian premiere. Directed by Fran Rood and musical direction by Ken Rogers, this production starred Diane Llewellyn-Jones as Margaret, Nicole Higginson as Clara and Stephen Morton as Fabrizio. The Berkeley Street Theatre in Toronto saw the Canadian premiere by Acting Upstage open on January 30, 2010. The Arena Stage production ran from March 5, 2010 through April 11, 2010, with Hollis Resnick as Margaret. The European premiere was directed by Paul Kerrison at the Curve Theatre, Leicester, UK in May 2009, starring Lucy Schauffer as Margaret and Caroline Jean as Clara, with design by George Suglides, Musical direction by Julian Kelly, lighting design by Giuseppe D'Irio, sound design by Paul Gruovbas. A highly acclaimed production at the OUB Cabaret Theatre in Chicago opened on March 11, 2012, starring Kelly Harrington as Margaret and Rachel Klippel as Clara. Harrington's performance won the Jeff Award for Best Actress. The run has been extended through June. The 2013 Shore Festival production runs in rep at the Courthouse Theatre in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. Preview began July 3, 2013 and officially opened July 26, 2013. Directed by Jade Gervais, starring Patty Jamieson as Margaret Johnson, the show runs till October 13. Front Porch Theatricals staged a performance as the second show of their 2015 season in August. It received rave reviews from both local and national critics, with Broadway World hailing the overall production and Josh Grosso in the role of Fabrizio. The cast included Becky Toth as Margaret and Lindsay Bear as Clara. It was directed by Steven Santa. Original Broadway cast: Victoria Clark as Margaret Johnson, Kelly O'Hara as Clara Johnson, Matthew Morrison as Fabrizio Nacarelli, Michael Barres as Giuseppe Nacarelli, Sarah Ariart-Berry as Franca Nacarelli, Patty Konawa as Signora Nacarelli, Beau Gravett as Roy Johnson, Mark Harilick as Senior Nacarelli, Joseph Siravo as the priest. Cast alternates. Patty Konawa would perform the role of Margaret Johnson on Friday evenings and Saturday matinees. Diane Sutherland would perform the role of Signora Nacarelli on Friday evenings and Saturday matinees. Broadway replacements. Erin Lazar replaced Matthew Morrison as Fabrizio Nacarelli on September 2, 2005. Chris Sarandon replaced Mark Harilick as Senior Nacarelli on September 13, 2005. Jennifer Hughes replaced Kelly O'Hara as Clara Johnson on December 6, 2005. Katie Rose Clark replaced Jennifer Hughes as Clara Johnson on December 15, 2005. Synopsis: Act 1. In the early morning of their first day in Florence, Margaret reads from her guidebook to Clara as the piazza around them is waking up and coming to life. A breeze carries Clara a unregistered trademark S hat off her head and across the square where a young Italian man, Fabrizio, miraculously catches it, mid-air, and returns it to her. The two are instantly smitten. But Margaret steers her daughter away from the encounter, bringing her next to the Uffizi Gallery where the reaching figures in the paintings speak to Clara of her own yearnings. Fabrizio appears, hoping to arrange a time to meet with Clara, but once again Margaret intervenes. Alone, Fabrizio sings in Italian his declaration of love at first sight for Clara, along with a heartfelt cry of fear that she could never love anyone as lost and without position as he. Fabrizio begs his father and his brother Giuseppe to help him dress more presentably for Clara. Giuseppe attempts to teach Fabrizio some dance steps as well. At the Duomo, Fabrizio once again catches up with Margaret and Clara, and this time Fabrizio unregistered trademark S father, Signor Nacarelli, is able to help penetrate Margaret unregistered trademark S resistance to any further involvement. They all agree to meet at sunset to take a walk and admire the view of the city from above at the Piazza El Michelangelo. Margaret and Clara are invited to have tea at the Nacarelli home. Giuseppe unregistered trademark S wife, Franca, takes Clara on a tour of the apartment, and alone in a separate room, she warns Clara about how quickly love can stale in marriage. Though the Nacarellis are universally impressed with Clara, Margaret tries without success to share her deep reservations. When she looks in Fabrizio unregistered trademark S eyes and sees the love there, she can't unregistered trademark T bring herself to disappoint him, as much as she feels she must. For there is something about Clara that none of these people know. Clara secretly makes plans to meet Fabrizio at midnight near the hotel. Margaret calls her husband Roy, who is back in the States. She tries to tell him what is happening with Clara and Fabrizio, but he is brusque and not very understanding, cutting short the conversation. Margaret, alone in her hotel room, reflects on the loneliness in her marriage. She checks in Clara unregistered trademark S room, and finds that she is missing. On her way to meet Fabrizio, Clara becomes lost in the maze-like streets of Florence. She loses all poise and control, becoming hysterical and screaming like a child. Her mother takes her back to the hotel and, as Clara sleeps, reveals the source of her disquiet. When Clara was a young girl, she was kicked in the head by a Shetland pony, and the accident has caused her mental and emotional abilities to develop abnormally. Margaret feels that she must take Clara away from Florence at once, and she steps down into the lobby to have a drink. While she is away, Fabrizio comes to the room, distraught. He cannot find the right words to express his feelings, and Clara urges him to use any other means. Clara accepts Fabrizio's unregistered trademark's proposal of marriage, and the two are embracing, half undressed, as Margaret walks in on them. Act 2, Margaret takes Clara to Rome to distract her and put an end to the affair. Back in Florence, the Nacarelli household is in complete chaos. As the family despairs, Signora Nacarelli translates in an aside. Fabrizio believes he has ruined everything with Clara, his father attempts to comfort him, and Giuseppe and Franca desire finer details. No matter what Margaret tries, her daughter refuses to give her an inch, culminating into a painful confrontation wherein Margaret slaps Clara across the face. Clara erupts with a torrent of feeling, centered on Fabrizio and the nature of love. This causes Margaret to relent, to set aside her doubts and considerations, and to no longer stand in the way of the wedding. The two return to Florence. Clara is instructed in the Latin catechism in preparation for converting to Catholicism, while around her everyone in the extended family sings of their feelings, stirred up by the immediate presence of such intense, young love. Franca, in an attempt to arouse her husband unregistered trademark's jealousy, kisses Fabrizio right on the mouth, and Clara witnesses it, breaking into a furious rant that ends with her throwing a drink on Franca. As Clara breaks down, Franca commends her for her bravery and declares her own desire to fight for Giuseppe. She toasts the upcoming union and is joined by the rest of the family. At the wedding rehearsal, Clara and Fabrizio are filling out the necessary forms when Signor Nacarelli sees something on Clara's unregistered trademark's form that causes him to call off the wedding and take his family away at once. Clara wants to know what is wrong with her, but her mother says there is nothing at all wrong. With Clara sobbing and broken, alone in one of the pews of the church, Margaret reveals her worst fears and her shame at having been the source of her daughter's unregistered trademark's lifelong suffering. She resolves to do whatever it takes to give Clara a chance for happiness. Margaret tries to reason with Signor Nacarelli. He admits that he saw Clara write her age on the forms €26, and that this makes her an unsuitable bride for his son who is only 20. Relieved that he has not discovered their secret, Margaret begs him to change his mind, but he will not. She invites him to take a walk with her, and the two wander from one end of Florence to the other as the sun slowly sets and the night comes on. By giving him time to mull things over and by not pressuring him, Margaret succeeds in putting the wedding back on track. Signor Nacarelli says he will meet them at the church the following morning. From the hotel room, Margaret calls Roy to tell him about the wedding. As might be predicted, he insists that Clara cannot handle the responsibilities of marriage. Clara, in her wedding dress, stands in the shadows, overhearing her move their unregistered trademark's side of the conversation. Margaret says, only just because she isn't unregistered trademark T normal, Roy, doesn't mean she's consigned to a life of loneliness. She mustn't be made to accept less from life just because she isn't like you or me shattered. Clara slips out of the hotel room and runs once more through Florence, meeting Fabrizio at the church in order to tell him that she cannot marry him. She won't unregistered trademark T allow herself to cause him any pain. Fabrizio assuages all of her fears. Moments before the wedding, Clara tells Margaret she can't unregistered trademark T leave her. Margaret assures her she can. Left alone, Margaret breaks open all the repressed doubts and yearnings that she has carried for years on end about love, realizing at last that the chance of love somehow outweighs the terrible risks. She joins the wedding ceremony. Song list. Critical response: Curtain Up called the musical a gorgeously staged and musically sophisticated adaptation. The Guettel sound is nevertheless plush and enjoyable with a genuine musical theatre sensibility. Lucas has made room for the young lovers' voices and retained enough of the psychological complexities to prevent this from being the dated soap opera it could easily have been. The Village Voice commented, "It has some considerable shortcomings. But its main distinction is that its humanity separates it from the bulk of current musical theatre." Critic John Simon, in NY Magazine, wrote, "Anyone who cares about the rather uncertain future of this truly American genre must see the show, think and worry about it, and reach his or her own conclusions." Craig Lucas unregistered trademark book seems perfectly adequate to me, but the emphasis must be on Adam Guettel unregistered trademark music and lyrics. The music, though fluctuating between the Sundance-esque and offbeat but still broadnish and the art song-like and even operatic, is steadily absorbing, even if only intermittently melodious. One duet, a Oe unregistered trademark Walk, a is an unqualified hit, but the rest, without fully cohering, is also arresting. Ted Sperling and Guettel unregistered trademark jaunty orchestrations add to the slightly disorienting but wholly fascinating harmonies and instrumentation. Ben Brantley, in the New York Times, deemed the show encouragingly ambitious and discouragingly unfulfilled. The production comes into its own only in the sweetly bitter maternal regrets and dreams of Margaret Johnson. He further made special mention of the gorgeous autumn leaf-strewn set, the lush golden lighting, and the delectable period costumes. Awards and nominations. Original Broadway production. References. External links. The Light in the Piazza at the Internet Broadway Database, official homepage, interview from Studio 360 radio program, The Light in the Piazza, Guide to Musical Theatre.